Hello and welcome to episode 103 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. On the other side of the line, as always, is Mr. Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. How you doing?
Not bad, you?
I'm very slowly getting there. Before we go anywhere else, let's talk Element Games. We've got lots and lots of new stuff coming out from GW. Let's just talk about the releases that have come out this weekend. We've got the 40k army deals, which can save you like 60 quid, I think, on the best ones. You've got the Adeptus Titanicus bundle, which saves you a Reaver and I think it's like a Reaver and 20 quid or something like that. So that's a good deal if you've not got into that yet. You can also pick up the books like Visions of Heresy. You can pick up from there for 40 quid rather than 50 quid. There's quite it's quite a chunk of stuff, and that's just the GW stuff. That's before you go into the tools. I've been using my Artis Opus brush, my size 2 for everything, which has been pretty good. Paints, brushes, all those hobby little knickknacks in the build up to Christmas. I find Christmas can be a really good time for picking up those little things that are like 10 or 15 quid that a family member won't spend much more than that on you for Christmas.
Yeah, like handy gift size prices sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stuff that you don't normally buy yourself because you've got enough already. And there's GW are quite clever at catering for all of that as well, aren't they? They're very clever at sort of bringing out lots of little bits and pieces like that around this time of year. Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually what's interesting, in fact, is it looks like we're getting. We might as well move swiftly into that. It looks like we're getting the demons in December. The realm of, I can't remember what the box is called now, but the Slaanesh and the Chaos and the Khorne demons had a December release date on it, and it's very.
Yeah, isn't that the same as like the Marines, like Calgar as well? Isn't he December as well?
Yeah. So the Realm of Chaos, Wrath and Rapture, that's the one. Like a December release for new toys, new army, new whatever, hasn't happened for a long time.
They always used to just sort of miss December, didn't they? It was always the
terrain package deals, those kind of things.
Yeah, there's sort of the stuff. It was all hobby related, mega paint sets and all that sort of stuff, wasn't it? Usually. Yeah, absolutely. So it was almost the last bastion of being able to predict roughly what GW do. There's still that kind of logic to what they do, but it always used to be like early November would be the box deal, and now that's happening various points through the year. And December, you could always rely on not having too much temptation for that brand new army, but that looks like that's out the window as well. So plenty to keep your eye on from Element to get that stuff, but. Yeah, those demons in the build up to Book 8, when demons will be a thing, even if they're not, even if the way you use them and the way you represent them isn't necessarily as God specific as we know them at the moment. There's a lot of cool models in there. Have you seen the model of the harp? The Slaanesh harp player? Indeed, with like sort of the body.
Yeah, it's a guy on the floor on his knees with his arms stretched and then like it looked like they were tendons pulled out to him, but I think they're hooked into his skin and then hooked across. A lot of old school kind of the more prone to moan kind of gamers were.
Prone to moan.
Yeah, that's a good line, isn't it? They were when the kids' books were announced and things like that. A few people were already on the GW are dumbing down Slaanesh, so that's why they've disappeared from 40k and Age of Sigmar and things like that. And they
and would they do the same to 40k, that sort of thing? Are they trying to?
It's not PC. It doesn't sell to kids and all that. And which actually, when you look at what they were doing anyway, it was pretty nonsense. They were always Slaanesh was always there, but they were choosing to keep that out. I think for Age of Sigmar, that's because the elves were pretty much out of it as well, and they were going to link that all in. This shows you.
It was all story driven, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For that element. It was
absolutely
part of their new direction, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, and they brought out Khorne stuff, they brought out Nurgle stuff, they brought out Zinch stuff. You know, it was going to be a matter of time. They are going to bring out some Slaanesh stuff at some point. And we see now there's very little they've done to tone back what Slaanesh is, which is great. I mean, I really didn't fear that they would in that respect. And that model is sickeningly beautiful.
Yes,
it's a cracking idea for a model, and we've got new fiends in there, and of course we've got new flesh hounds, and we've got Karanak, the 3-headed flesh hound. He's back as well, and they're looking fantastic. So that's a good thing in the build up to say book 8. I think we might see a few more demons hitting the table in 30k. And this
it does make it a lot easier, doesn't it? If they bring out some cool looking new demons. And it makes it easier for everyone in, like, say, 30k. Then, I mean, that new model thing where you think, I'll get myself some new models, then it's great when we can use them as well.
Yeah, and
it's got cross-platform support.
Yeah, for someone like me who plays all 3 games, it means that demons are, just an almost kind of an auto option in the list of what do I collect next, because I can do one army and it can fulfill 3 different systems. Maybe other gamers might wait until book 8's out before seeing exactly what they do, but the ability to go to a complete plastic range, it'd be interesting to see if we get a boost of demonic armies or influenced armies like we do with the Custodes being being able to do a lot of it in plastic. I think helps the Custodes armies, and the fact there aren't that huge amounts of them might be different because demons, potentially we could have a lot of really cool stuff, but a lot of larger armies. But with rules for things like they've already spoken about demons that can at least make a Primarch stop and think, then that's not going to be cheap either. So there could be ways of doing demonic armies that are not necessarily as bulky as some are, but even then, if you're buying them all in plastic as opposed to resin, that's a considerable price difference. So that's good. It's good, and it rounds out, and it gives one ally to the traitors, where the loyalists have Custodes, have Knight Errant, and have Sisters of Battle, Sisters of Silence. Sorry, so all the Talon stuff and Knight Errant. The Chaos Forces don't quite have all that. But it's a nice little boost, isn't it? Yeah, they just need
it balances out a bit.
Yeah, so just a few more agents of the War Master or whatever in there, and that'll be pretty sweet, to be honest.
Awesome.
Yeah, we weren't going to do a rundown of the Vigilus open day. I was contemplating on doing a Fnatic episode about it, but I think
I was there.
Oh, were you? Oh, I didn't realise.
I was there.
So
and it was quite embarrassing, really, because I only realised they released a new Titan until I got home and had looked online.
You're amazing. I was about to say
all day, and I didn't even see it. I
was about to say, what do you think of it in person? Because I've heard that I've heard the Warhammer community photos. That view of it is not necessarily the best view to appreciate it. I think you can go on and get a 360, which gives you a bit of a better look. Now it's available as an actual release. It's an interesting kit. So
one sec, mate. One sec. The funny thing was, obviously, I looked at it online. I got home and then realised it had been released. And I think the problem might have been there that I walked up to the studio area, which was very, very small. But the funny thing was, I sort of, the photo table was sort of at a right angle as you sort of walked into the studio area. And I looked down the table and I saw Titans on the table, and I immediately just thought they were the standard ones that were previously released, i.e. the Warlord and bits and pieces like that. So I didn't even give it a second look, because I just looked and went, oh yeah, Titans, and then just walked over to the heavy metal area, just had a quick look in their cabins, had a quick chat, and then I literally walked out of the studio area and didn't go back in it. And it was only then when I got home that I then looked online and went, oh, there's a new Titan that's been released. And it sort of probably says a lot that I didn't actually spot that it was It didn't look any different, or didn't make. What's that over there?
When you're at these events, you're so focused on painting anyway, aren't you?
Well, yes, I am, and also I think I went to the event very much thinking, well, there'll be nothing new from Forge World.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that I had that preset in my mind that, well, it's the 40k event. There won't be anything new. I'll just, I walked over to the heavy metal team and they said, "Oh, have you seen Calgary's in the cabinet?" Oh no, I didn't. And I had a quick look, and I had a quick look at the demons, and I sort of didn't spend much more time in there.
Sure. Yeah.
I spent a lot of the time in the Golden Demon area. Not that I entered, but with obviously there was tons of painters that turned up, and it meant that it was just so many people to talk to. It was like a reunion of Golden Demon painters, because everyone was entering the last mini demon, and there was lots of tables and chairs by the cabinets. So I ended up sitting down and just talking to people, and everyone had models out and stuff. So it was quite cool in that respect. But I didn't really look around at anything. Sure. I didn't go to any seminars. I didn't do anything else.
So let's move on from that then, if you didn't do anything. So this is the Warbringer Nemesis Titan. Nemesis.
Yep.
The Warbringer is the chassis, which sits between a Reaver and a Warlord. And Nemesis is like its role on the table. So it's essentially a gun platform.
Yep.
And it's got Reaver weapons on its arms, and then basically Warlord weapons on its top. This does mean that potentially down the line we could get Nemesis versions of other Titans. But I think it looks. Cool. I think I'm not a huge, like, compared to the other Titans, I'm not like massively overawed by it. I love the idea of the great big cannon on top, and the fact it's this platform. And not to mention that, but this is 40k, so they've got a human spotter sitting in there to measure the ranges.
Yes,
they've got a couple of spotters in there actually. So which is I love that touch on it.
That made it look quite cool for me actually when I then actually looked at it online. I must admit, I think if you're a massive Titan fan, if you really love your giant gods of war, then I think you're going to be really excited about it. Yeah. But I think that a lot of people will be like, "Oh, cool, another Titan,"
Well, it's one of those things. If you're not in, like, I don't I don't purchase Titans because I don't actually like a lot of the bigger games where they actually become like sensible to use, and then also how many times you play those games. And some people play them a lot. I wouldn't play them a lot, so it will sit on my shelf and look pretty if I ever got around to painting it. So for me, I'd rather spend that money somewhere else. But there are people out there who've got a Warlord, 2 Reavers, 3 Warhounds, and they're going to go and buy this. And it's sensible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I'm sure it does take plenty of time to design this. But I think that time investment for the cost of the model that Forge World put it out as, it becomes, they wouldn't make it if it wasn't really kind of good value for them. And so they're going to make Titans all that time that they can sell more Titans to people who probably already have Titans. I do like this
and
one.
I think it's got a lot of cues, isn't it, from the other Titans. Yeah. So you can tell that maybe it was probably not the biggest project in the world for them to pull together, with all the stuff being computerized now and manipulation of a design almost.
Potentially, yeah. I think they've done a good job on it. I think I like the idea, because this is as we say, it's a gun platform, so it has its own air defences, because that's a sensible way to attack a gun platform. It looks good. It's cool. We've got some rules for it as well. I haven't really looked at them properly, but we're talking about 2,100 points for it. It's got a front armour of 15, side of 14, rear of 12, and all the weapons are free, basically, whatever weapons you have. But you've got 6 void shields on it. You've got all the Titan rules that are regular for it, and the only thing I can look at here that would make you think, if you were consider using, I think most people don't consider them as kind of or I don't know, some do, but a lot of people are just like, it's a Titan, I just want it. And some people are like, oh, it's a Titan, but it's not worth taking compared to this, and this. I don't think
trying to analyze it for its.
I don't think that's normal
usefulness.
I don't think that's most Titan owners personally. I could be wrong, because on the reactor meltdown, it goes nuclear. If it suffers the Titanic explosion result, it goes proper nuclear. So all hits when it's destroyed are destroyer hits. So you're not.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to be putting stuff around this.
So you keep yourself away from it.
Yeah, but it's a Titan. It's going to take a lot to take it down. It's cool. I like it. I say I don't think it's worth getting into too much of its on-field role, because it's just one of those things you get because it's cool, I think. So.
Yeah, and I think you're right in what you're saying. The people that are going to buy it are people that would buy it regardless of the rules. They'd be buying it to almost complete a collection of Titans they will have.
Yeah,
I think up to Warhound size, you can sometimes get people to say, "Oh, well, I'm going to have this because I want it for this army, or want it for this particular, thing." But I think as soon as you go above that, it's just a pure luxurious toy, isn't it? Really, that you want to. It's a want to have. It's not something you're writing a list around, and it's going to be the cornerstone of your army.
No, I think the more interesting aspect is when it gets ported into Adeptus Titanicus.
Yes, definitely.
And its role in that and how it will fare up. And we can't really draw too much from that. Maybe it does go bigger booms in Adeptus Titanicus than a regular kind of equivalent sized chassis would. But I don't think there's any point kind of jumping ahead of the game on that one. But that it will be that midpoint between the Warlord and the Reavers, as it is. But and it means that I don't think the process is quite as simple as, well, you just because they're making. Well, they might make it in resin. I don't know. It'd be an interesting way. They can't just shrink the CAD down, but they can certainly make things easier to shrink it down and make any modifications they need to make. So that's good.
I mean, I suppose that's one good thing they can look at now, and maybe why we have seen a new Titan been released at this sort of juncture, that they're sort of, they can look at it to go across.
Well,
they can say, right, well, we can make this work. We could, if we design this, we've got a bit of work then, and we can then make it into Adeptus Titanicus.
Yeah,
it's almost like, again, being clever with, how you release
resources.
Your models and how much work you're going to put into developing them.
So there's, in fact, moving on to that. So we know that there's a size of Titan that is smaller than a Warhound. And I think they confirmed that it will be coming to Adeptus Titanicus. There's a lot of hearsay, a lot of wish listing. There was some talk about it's basically only going to have a carapace weapon or rather than arm weapons. It seems a bit strange, but whatever. There's going to be a lighter class Titan than a Warhound. And apparently they've said they have no immediate plans to kind of make it for 40k, but it almost seems like, why wouldn't you? They know Titans, they know Knights sell well, they know Titans sell well. Maybe that's not exactly the same market, but kind of in between that, something that fits both. Maybe a model that gets Titan players closer to buying Knights, and vice versa. I think at the end of the day, because if they design it small, they can design it big and scale it down, so it's sitting there for when you want to release it. It's almost like Titans are their new dreadnoughts.
Yes, yeah.
Every now and then you just get a new dreadnought just because dreadnoughts sell.
Dreadnoughts sell, and it's very easy for them to customise a dreadnought and knock one out or knock two out, as we now know.
Well, that's the beauty of this weapon, this Titan. It uses Warlord and slightly modified, I think, Warlord and Reaver weapons, but then they can just update their Reaver weapons with these weapons. So there's a lot of kind of, as I say, crossover. You put a lot of effort into one thing, and then that effort can be used for other things as well.
Yeah, and that's a clever way of doing it. That's an intelligent way of doing it.
Absolutely.
But back in the old days, where it was, each one of these models was bespokely made and then cast, that was a big undertaking, wasn't it? To say, right, we're going to make a new class of Titan. But now,
absolutely,
you can, with all the technologies they've got, it's a lot easier for them to make more out of it.
Sure. And Pendrag was there again. I borrowed some information from his write-up of the event. We book 8s at the printers. We expecting it next year. All the usual stuff. Still probably going to be a weekender release. The good thing is, if they get it back in time, it will be a weekender release and a full release, either same weekend or shortly afterwards, which would be good.
Cool.
That's not confirmed. That's they won't give us Forge World won't give us a time on the books until they're in the country, ready to be kind of given out, because they've been burned before on that. They're delving into some of the old lore. There's a White Scars historical battle with the Enslavers back from Rogue Trader, which you kind of expect this thing with Forge World now. There's people who've been. I know Andy Hoare has helped out write some of the background, I believe, for the White Scars. Very much helped out the team, as it were, not taking it over like it has been reported, maybe even by, I don't know if I did or not, but and he's a big fan of his old lore. He's a vet, so that kind of stuff seeps in, and they go and look this stuff up as well. It's there for them, which is really good.
I mean, you can imagine they've got an awesome library with every bit of information they've ever ever put out there. For us, it's a lot harder to sort of delve in and find out that.
They've got a bloke. I know Black Library certainly have had a bloke who, it's like, I'm writing this book and I need to know everything about this planet and this race. Can you go and get it for me? And they get kind of information come out like that, which is really cool. We're just waiting for that now. We've got Adeptus Titanicus Beta Garment book is set for release in January. Transfers will come shortly afterwards, or at some point afterwards. So we got new mana pools in that. We got all the background, blah de blah de blah. No more kind of upgrade weapons in plastic, I don't think. We had the Warlord, the debacle, but I think they're moving to resin for most of those weapons now, if not all of them, which is fair enough. If you're going to make them like that, they can't be 100% sure how well they're going to sell. Although I have heard that the Warlord and the Reaver have sold exceptionally well. It'll be interesting to see in 6 months' time if they, if sales are still doing well or not. Whether we can ever find out that information is a different thing.
Do you remember when they used to publish the top 10 selling items on a regular email?
Yeah. That stopped.
That was always quite interesting, really. And
it was almost always a Titan or something like that at the top. So it was obviously done on cost, on money recouped.
Definitely.
Which is fair enough, but and there was a very small chat, and in fact this was on Warhammer TV as well, about Battlefleet Gothic and the fact that there's a desire to do it within the team, but having looked at it, the kind of the energy involved, the man hours involved would mean it would dominate everything specialists do for the best part of a year. So they obviously can't take away those hours. They've still got, you've got Blood Bowl, Adeptus Titanicus and Necromunda that have got regular releases coming out. I'm pretty sure they're already working on their next game as well. I wouldn't be surprised whenever that may come out. But their team has to expand. They've been expanding the specialist team because you almost need one person doing the rules for those 3 games and keeping them up to date, and then one person working on the next game as well, don't you? They're going to have to keep going.
The problem is you can't just switch that off. No. You can't just say, right, well, we've done that now.
Well, they've decided,
because it's been released, turn that off.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Because people are investing into it, and that whole idea is this specialist games division. That's not the model they're trying to push. No,
and that's and they were well aware of that, and the way they were brought around about how the way specialist games came into being, it was okay. We're going to try this with Blood Bowl. Let's see if it works. Oh, that's worked. Okay. Right, well, here's a few more people, and let's try Necromunda. Okay, we might have got a bit of a winning formula here. Okay, so we're going to need to expand. And that's a sensible way to do it. They haven't gone and employed loads of people and then screwed themselves over. And that team will have to increase and increase and increase. And I was listening to a little bit of the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, Throne of Skulls today, and they were talking about, they were actually talking about items being out of stock on the website. And I don't know if Adam Troke basically said, there used to be a email me when this is back in. I don't know if it's still there or not. There was some debate about that. But he basically said, if, lots and lots and lots of people click that button because they want to be emailed when something comes back in, it might jump the queue, because that makes sense business-wise. But in an
they're going to look at analytics like that, aren't they? And say, this could be a good seller.
But what more importantly, he said that their expansion of their manufacturing is almost like there, and the new building is almost ready. I don't know how true that is. That's a throwaway remark. Maybe it wasn't quite meant like that, or what have you. But we know they're moving. We know offices are moving as well. So hopefully, Forge World are going to have more space. Because whether it's them move or someone else move, and then the manufacturing is going to improve as well. So we're going to have more toys available all the time rather than some of the kind of backlog they've had. And that's good for GW. That means that specialist team can grow, which is good for them. And you never know, hopefully Forge World itself as well, Prime as it were, can continue as well. Lots of
just a little sidebar. Yeah. Do you know the kits, some of the kits you buy, and they're made in China?
Mainly
like scenery and it's not usually the main models. It's usually scenery and little add-ons and bits and pieces.
Yeah,
this is something I've recently. I bought some a pack of. I bought them for the birds, but it's like an Age of Sigmar release.
Long strikes.
Yeah, Beasts of Chaos.
The endless spells. Yeah, are they made?
Yeah, they're printed in China, but I can really tell the difference in quality from the Chinese stuff to what they make in the UK.
Yes,
like the definition they're not quite as defined.
They use a harder plastic, I believe.
The print, the plastic, yeah.
There is an issue with that, and some of the endless spells, if they're done in China. Certainly had a couple of them were harder to go together, but definitely they do a lot of terrain out there. But yeah, an interesting aside for everybody. But Forge World have, so I kind of suspected this. We talked about this. I'm going to claim this one. We've got some Blood Angels out, before the book comes out. So we've got the Leviathan Dreadnought, the Contemptor Dreadnought, the Praetor in Tartarus Terminator armour and in Power armour, and we've seen them all. It's nice to see them again, but they are looking fantastic.
They're looking fantastic, and I was just shocked that they all dropped like literally the same. I was like, "Whoa, you're not even going to space these out for a couple of weeks?"
Well, yeah. So
there you go. Have them, and get going.
Yeah, because I was quite surprised because it dropped with the Warbringer as well. And in fact, I think last week as well we had a mix. So I was like, oh, maybe we aren't doing a kind of here's a Hobbit week, here's a thingy week. Maybe it's a little less organised than that. Who knows? It could settle down again. But we've got like the almanacs for Blood Bowl come out as well. There's a maybe they wanted to get these out before Christmas, which would be sensible, particularly some of those other things.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And we also got the Legion Vigilator and the Legion Praevian at the same time as well. And it makes you think. Yeah. It makes you think. Couldn't those two have come out 2 weeks ago when there was a lull, or whenever
It does make you think that I know that obviously that we're coming into the Christmas period, so obviously they want things available for people to buy. But some of that stuff you think, well, surely that could have been queued up a bit sooner.
Yeah, maybe there's a reason for it. We don't know. At the end of the day, we're sitting outside, but. In that big kind of month or whatever where we had nothing, if we'd just had the Legion Vigilator and the Praevian released in the middle of that would have gone a distance to kind of alleviating some of that negative feeling.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, but I think
because they're things for everyone that everyone can get on board with. You know, the Blood Angel release is fantastic, but I'm not a Blood Angels player, so I will just look at the models and think, oh yeah, they look cool. Whereas the Praevian and the Vigilator, I looked at those and thought, oh cool, you know, looking at them, how I could paint them, did I have a use for them in an army, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see what we get in the next month or so. Traditionally, we don't get a huge amount, or we don't get much in the week between Christmas and New Year, certainly from GW, because they don't really get a delivery in that period of time, or never used to. At the moment, the way things are going, it's not very easy to predict kind of anything in that respect.
They'll drop a Primarch or something now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who knows? But hopefully we'll get a few more bits in the build-up to Book 8 coming out. And yeah, that'd be cool. But we shall have to wait and see on that one, because, as I say, I don't really know. But it's good to see those come out. That's a real injection into our community.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of people very, very excited, and I can completely understand why. So that's good. Black Library have been at it as well. As I said earlier, we got Visions of Heresy is now available. The Horus Heresy audio collection, if you want to jump in, is available. And we got the Black Library Advent calendar. It started obviously on the 1st. With, I think we've got 5 or 6 heresy stories in there, starting with Old Wounds, New Scars. There's a Laurie Golding one, which had it's like the last, I can't remember what it's called now. Something like, let me just try and find it. Man looks something up online. There we go. Last Council. So that's an interesting title. And Laurie has had a history in the recent past of making some kind of bold, potentially controversial stories. So that could be quite good to look at. And on top of that, we've had the Coming Soon has been updated. And the first book in the Siege of Terror is going to have a special edition that's going to be available in March. So it could be on pre-sale at the Weekender. Fingers crossed. I don't think it's going to be cheap, but it comes with like maps and every a coloured page before every chapter and a vinyl cover and stuff like that. So for people like me, that's just a trap to take my money and it will work.
Yes.
So, but it will.
That's just just crowbarring money out of your wallet, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but hey, I know what I'm getting into, and it looks beautiful. So I've just picked up Spear of the Emperor by it's a 40k novel, current timeline by ADB, and if it's remotely as good as the quality of that product, then it'll be worth the money. So yeah, there's plenty going on with Black Library as well as we start to wrap up the Heresy and head over into the Siege of Terror. So plenty of stuff going on. Was there anything else? Have we missed anything from this kind of period of stuff?
It's a nice change not to be saying nothing's come out. There's been nothing new. So
yeah, absolutely. It was interesting. I've seen some more chat about the Weekender as well. There was some comment that there might be some specialist games kind of there still, even though...
Okay.
Yeah, and I saw a comment, again, it might have been taken out of context, it might be something else, but I don't necessarily have a problem with that going forwards. But we've got an exciting period now. Feels like it's ages away, doesn't it, the Weekender, but that'll be with us. Do
you know what it does? For me, it feels like miles away, but I know that it's going to suddenly appear on us.
Yeah, and one thing with the Vigilus kind of open days, Weekender, did they call it a Weekender? I think they may have done. Did you, when you bought your ticket, you went one day? Could you purchase a single day's ticket, or was it for the whole weekend?
My ticket was just for the day, I believe. I think they did have two types on there. Cool. You could buy the Weekender or just the first day.
Because it looks like there's the events team might be looking at doing that now going forwards. These replacing the open days, which will be an interesting way of doing it.
Calling them weekend, because I must admit it did feel themed. It obviously because they've it was around Vigilus, and so I didn't pay any attention to it because it was 40k. But they very much tried to theme everything, and it was all to do with this, and good idea, I suppose. I do worry for the open days a bit now that there won't be Golden Demons at them anymore. A lot of the people that turned up for the Golden Demon turned around and said, "Well, I've got no reason to come to an open day ever again." So I was like, okay, well, maybe they do have to reinvent the open days a bit to sort of keep interest there.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It'd be interesting to see again, because we've had this discussion with the Weekender. Does removing the Golden Demons open it up to more people who want to attend the event itself rather than the painting competition? There's only one way to wait. We can only wait and see, I suppose. Will it mean that you then won't be attending any open days? For you?
Yeah, for me, I would. I'm always going to want to probably go to the Heresy Weekender. But apart from that, I will probably now be looking just mainly to go to things with Golden Demons. So that'll be Warhammer Fest, really. I can't see me going to many open days unless they did something miraculous with it that really made me think, wow, that sounds like the most amazing day to go up for. But you know what it's like with a lot of these events we've been to. You start questioning the relevance of them, because once you've been and you've spoken to the people and you haven't and understand, there's not a lot to go and see. I mean, and the studio area at Vigilus was about 3 or 4 tables.
Yeah,
so it wasn't.
It was in it was actually in the main hall, wasn't
massive. It was in the main hall.
Yeah.
Just to one side. If there was no people there, crowds there, it would have taken you 2 minutes to walk and look at all the stuff that was in the cabinets, and you wouldn't. What I would say was usually more studio stuff at a Weekender. Previous Weekenders, like studio tables and things. So it wasn't a lot. If you then take that out of it, you then had gaming events on, and they had some hobby area, and they had build a marine, paint a marine, all that sort of stuff going on, and then seminars. So there wasn't abundance of stuff going on. If you'd taken the Golden Demon out of that, I would think, wow, what is there to?
How much was your ticket? Do you remember?
£12.
It was £12, yes, because I purchased a ticket for the New Year's open day. Because it sits on the 5th, I think, Saturday the 5th. So I think it's quite good. I can go back to work for a couple of days, then, travel up there just for the day, travel back. But yeah, it was £12 or £12.50 for that. And I'm wondering kind of what justifies that cost. Part of me wonders if it's just here's £5 for the open day and here's £7.50 to walk around the exhibit, which is essentially what the cost of walking around the exhibit is. Whatever, I'm going to give it a go. I tried to kind of find out if there'll be much there that's relevant to my interests, and didn't get answers as usual. Apparently all these contacts, and none of them are useful, which is pretty standard. So I thought, you know what, actually it'll be good just to go up and see some people, because again, there are different people at these open days than there are at the Weekenders or tournaments or events or what have you. So there are a group of people that I tend to see only at open days, which will be good to go and see. So for £12, actually 12 quid, 5 quid, that doesn't matter because I'm spending more on fuel to get up there and everything.
For me, the biggest outlay was the fuel to get there and back,
and food, and food.
And it was great. What was great about it when I went up there was so many people up there who went to Golden Demon, although I didn't enter. It was like everyone just kept saying, wow, this is amazing, like everyone is here. It felt like a classic Demon at Fest.
Sure.
Literally everyone had turned up, and it was great. But then of course everyone's saying, well, I wouldn't come to an open day unless it had a Golden Demon. So that none of that crowd are going to go to an open day. So
maybe the crowd below them, who are not
possibly
Golden Demons, maybe think, actually, I'm happy with whatever the painting competition is. I want to go and see how
those little ones pan out, really.
Yeah, I mean, if people come to view it as a I need to step up a level. I want to enter Golden Demon and do as well as I can, but I know I'm not going to do very well. So if I go here, maybe that's a better judge of where I am and things like that. Who knows? I think, again, if I was in the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire area, 12 quid, I'd go.
Yeah.
It's the drive. It's the getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. The fuel you spend to drive up there and back. And it's not, I'm not saying it's a hardship, but it becomes harder to justify depending on, if you're not getting a huge amount out of the event. So, yeah, it'd be interesting and be good to go up there, and I might have to try and find someone else coming from my area to jump in the car, but we'll have to see.
I think that's where it becomes easier, is if you've got 2 or 3 of you going and you can split that fuel cost, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's not just a fuel
Suddenly
cost either.
It makes sense.
The 3-hour drive up is part of your event then, whereas if you're by yourself, the 3-hour drive up is either a chance to listen to podcasts or audiobooks. It's not quite the same appeal. So, yeah, we shall have to see. Was there anything else new? Have we done all the kind of new stuff for the last 2 and a bit weeks because we're recording late? I think so.
I would have thought so.
There was the model of the Gene Stealer Cults looking over the plans, the hollow plans of
that's cool.
Of GW base, which is cool in and of itself. And then I've seen a number of people stating that hollow table thing can be used as an objective marker. Tom Sargent suggested putting it on a Mechanicum, putting it on the Abeyant and having people around it as like a mobile in battle kind of piece of your army, but also as this kind of tactical display unit. There's some cool stuff there. And then, in fact, the rest of the Gene Stealer Cult range, again, not strictly 30k, but we can tie this in so that the guys on the bikes.
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Models.
How would they be used?
People can use them as Rough Riders for 40k. Absolutely, the guy on the quad is awesome. The Blackstone Fortress models have got some like Chaos Imperial Troop, like guys who used to be Imperial troops who've just recently turned to, pledged to Chaos. So they're sort of there or thereabouts. And apparently, according to Darren, they the designers, the guys who designed those models really enjoyed it and want to do more. So we might be seeing even more plastic models that can be used for your militia armies and your other things like that. And when you look at the Gene Stealer Cults, the bodies, they're all designed to be interchangeable with the other human-sized bodies, things like that. So I actually really like the kind of regular Gene Stealer Cult bodies, obviously not the ones with 3 arms. I think you can easily turn that into some really cool Imperial militia if you want that, or Chaos militia, and then you can use the more like kind of the Gene Stealer Cult heads actually don't look out of place in a cults list because
definitely,
because they're not all necessarily alien either. They're just a little bit weird, so they easily fit into that. So there's a lot of scope there, and again, maybe that's what helps bring more militia armies to the table.
Yeah, I do love the Gene Stealer Cult models, and then when I saw those bikes, I thought, there's got to be a use for them somewhere. There's got to be a way of utilising those, but they do look awesome. Yeah.
So, and we're going to see more and more. I think we're coming to an interesting point. For 40k and for ages, for 40k particularly, they basically announced now that all the old. Like Gene Stealer Cults, I think that's the last one of the old codexes that they had to update for the new edition. So you then hit a point, and I can see us getting a new Primaris, a Space Marine one coming soon, and that'll be kind of because that's their new boy. But moving on from that, it'll be really interesting to see what they do, because in 2 years, in the space of 2 years, 2.5 years, they've caught up. So do they now go back into some of their older stuff and then revamp it? Or do they actually start expanding out from what they've got with, like they do with Age of Sigmar, with these sub-factions And are we going to see are we going to see the 40k IP essentially do what Age of Sigmar IP did for Warhammer, where they've gone, actually, let's just have this sub-faction and design something that is recognisable within the setting, but is very identifiable as something new.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's lots of potential going forwards, looking at these ranges, and loads of cool stuff to do. And say, even from a 30k viewpoint, we can look at that as well, even if you're not into those games. Keep your mind open, and that's, it's fantastic, particularly when you're looking at, when you take what they're doing and then look at, say, Anvil or Skyball or whoever that are making third-party bits. The scope becomes huge. And yes, okay, Space Marines probably doesn't for Legions. We're probably going to be in that point. But even then, there's stuff like you can make kind of different versions of Dreadnoughts with the Armiger kits. Even if you don't want to use the Armiger, there's stuff you can still do if you're creative and are willing to go and do it. So yeah. There's lots of cool stuff. Brilliant. Was there anything else new? I think we might have covered. That's quite a lot of stuff. I say some of it maybe less kind of directly related to 30k, but quite a lot of stuff, and I can see it building up, pushing into to the new stuff coming out in the new year. Yeah, so we're done on that. We'll move on to, we did put a call out for some questions. We didn't get many. We did put it out not long before we started recording. And I think a couple of other podcasts had the same idea and got theirs up earlier as well, which may have seen a reduction on these. But we'll start with Jamie Harcourt Billingham. What are you hoping to see at the Heresy Weekender? So I don't know if you've thought about this, but we're looking at... So my hope is Book 8 is released, and therefore there'll be a lot of looking at Book 8. It'll be... I almost want to say I want to see some White Scars, but you never know, we might see some beforehand. I definitely...
That's true.
I think we'll get... I think they'll hold off on the Primarch till...
I see, because I'm opposite to that. I'm hoping we see a Primarch, whether it's completed or a work in progress. I know that they'll probably more... they always do that reveal at the end. Tony Cottrell loves that Primarch reveal, doesn't he?
I've got... Yeah.
And so I'm sure we'll have one of those. I'm really looking forward to... I'm really hoping we see a Primarch. I'm really hoping we get the new book, because I find if that's released on the Weekender, that makes a massive boost to the whole event.
Yeah.
Because then everyone's buzzing and talking about stuff and, flicking through the book. Have you seen this? Have you seen page so-and-so? And even like when the last one with Victor so-and-so, can you see those tourists? And, all that sort of, It was just brilliant. When you have that, it just makes the whole event so exciting. So I really hope we see that. I really hope we see, obviously, a Primarch or something along those lines. And then everything else, I'm really open to. I just want to see how the venue's going to hold up and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm really bad at these questions because I'm like, whatever they want to show us, I'm like, cool. Yeah, I want to see it all. I want to see a Primarch. I'd love to see Sanguinius, which I think will be the next one. I was just thinking, did Forge World do their jigsaw puzzle last year? They did it the year before and the year before that. I think they did. I can't remember.
Wasn't there a year, or was it last year, where they almost weren't going to do it, but then almost just released it all in one big hit anyway?
The problem is that it was both years. The problem is they preload the pages and then they activate the pages. So once you know the first page, like if you're sensible, you can search for the completed image, which generally happens. So I wonder if they'll do like a little mini jigsaw part of something for the Weekender. But yeah, I'd like to see Sanguinius. I'd like to see that. I'd like to... I don't know what else we're going to get. Maybe some demons. I'd like to see some 30k demons. even if it's a named character, because again, I think that helps boost what we're going forwards. We've chatted. I'm going to talk to guys at the weekend. I've heard little snippets, and I don't know how true they are, and I'm not going to repeat stuff because it will start stories. I think. Well, I know that Darren's reported that the team think that book 8 is good. Like they're like quietly confident, hoping that we appreciate it as well. They think they've written a good book, and I've heard some other little bits about like the background could be quite cool, or the scenarios feeding in some stuff like that. Yeah, but I mean, who knows? We don't know till we get the book. We've talked, Blood and Glory talked with someone about having more basic missions. Now, I don't think we're going to get that at the Weekender, but that would be something that I'm going to go and kind of talk to. And we're going to get book 8 in February. We've already had the Blood Angels. Like the start of this year, 2019 is going to be Heresy Buzz. My problem is, like, and it almost sounds negative. It's not negative. It's just being mindful of the way that things go. Is it going to be a year till the next book? Is it going to be a year and a half? I would like to kind of have a rough idea. They won't tell us, so that's fine. But we know that it's going to be like at the very earliest a year. Most books have been a year and a half period. That's fine. That's cool. Let's have something in the middle of that period, which gives us something to keep that buzz going. And so, like September 2019, I'd love them to release like, here's 6 extra missions. Here's some extra cool stuff. We know Book 8's going to have its own version of Centurion, kind of a more lower scale. I think they used some of the rules in the Heresy event they did. So, no vehicle with a combined armor value of more than 33. And then, you must take certain hammer infantry or whatever, and nothing too big, basically. No name characters, all that jazz. So I think that's coming. It'll be really interesting to take that home and play some games with it and see if that works as well as they intend. Whether that's enough, hopefully it will be. Be cool to see kind of how they extend that. In terms of the Weekender itself, I think we're going to get some cool models. I mean, they can't not keep doing what they do with cool models. Hopefully, keeping some back for Sunday. Have
that worked really well last year.
Absolutely,
the whole sort of new reveals. I really hope that carries on because that made the whole Sunday really cool.
Yeah, it does.
It was suddenly like, I've got a whole new reason to go around and talk to people in the studio, and I can look at new things. It's amazing, rather than I've been around there.
So I think my real thing is, so what I want from the Weekender is all the good stuff we've had before, done well.
Yes,
a well done Weekender, but we're also moving to this new venue, and that apparently was done with because it's more suitable for them to be able to do stuff. So let's see. Maybe the kind of campaign open gaming like they had a few years ago, where it was it's not structured, but you could play into the weekend's campaign gaming. Let's have something like that rather than just open tables where people come along and play. Yeah, that's cool, but let's have it more focused. We don't know what author's going to be there or anything else. But it'll be all build up to Siege of Terror. So let's have some people talking. Again, they're not going to be able to tell us too much, but we may be able to get some glimpses at that point of where we might be looking for stories. That would be quite cool. But I don't know. I've talked a lot about, not a lot really, because I'm not even 100% sure. At the end of the day, I want a well-run event. I want to be able to see some cool stuff. I want to be able to hear about some cool stuff that's going on. I want to be able to talk to the artists and the writers and whoever about what they're getting up to and try and get that little bit more information than the last person got, which everyone tries to do. And I want to hang out. I want to have a decent bar area where we can hang out and chat. I don't want the drinks to be too expensive, so I can actually buy a few for people. I know the breakfast is hideously expensive at that place. It was like 20 odd quid if you went for the breakfast option.
That is right. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want a restaurant fairly close that I can go to for food, just in case it's
it's worth to note. You know there's a discounted GW rate.
Is there on
the hotel rooms? I got into an email conversation with a lady about my reservation because I put some requests on my my room reservation. So she was emailing me saying, "Oh, we can't do it that way," because I was asking for joining rooms, saying and she's going, "Oh no, the rooms you've ordered, you can't join them," because I'd ordered business class rooms because they only because when I quickly went on the website, the business class ones had breakfast included, and then when I looked at the other ones and then all you get to do options, I went, do you know what? If I click this, I know I'm getting what I want. So I did that and said, "Can I join a room?" She said, "No, you can only join if you have a junior suite and a standard room, or 2 standard rooms." And I said, "I'm happy to have 2 standard rooms if I can have them to join." And she came back and said, "Oh, okay. Well, I can change your booking to 2 standard rooms. Oh, did you know there was also a Games Workshop discounted rate for? Would you like me to change your booking to the discount rate?"
Sure.
And I said, "Yes, please." So,
do you know what the difference in price was?
Do you know what? Looks up things on the internet.
It's gone up £20.
Hold on.
But yeah, I hope there are facilities around in case we need them. But
what's the name of the hotel?
It is the Radisson Blu. We're doing this live on the podcast. It's all good. But that's part of the. It's an interesting move going from a hotel we know how they work. Change is bad. Everyone's scared of change.
Definitely.
So it's all part of the fun.
So from my vast searching on the Tinterwebs, effectively you get free breakfast thrown in for the Games Workshop rate. It works out to like £88 for a single room, but that includes your breakfast and includes your parking.
Yeah, which is not bad. You know what you're going to get with the Radisson as well. It's going to be decent, so that's cool. All good. And we can only judge it once we've been there. We should probably move on to another question. Drew Beats, are you coming to Adepticon this year? Yes, I am.
Yay, we both
Neil?
are.
Yes, you are as well. And in fact, Neil, letting you know this on air, we got another friend coming who's going to be playing some 40k in Age of Sigmar. So we'll have 3 in the room. It's all good. But yeah, we'll be there from I'm trying to remember, we're there 5 nights, I think. That includes the Sunday night. So we're there for the whole lot. I am doing minimal gaming. I think I'm doing doubles Age of Sigmar, some Zone Mortalis, and Centurion. I can't remember which days I'm doing those, but that's all the gaming I've got booked in. There's then potential for me to play some other games and a lot of hanging out, a lot of walking around, maybe some helping out as well. For me, it's as much about the experience of being out there and involved as it is anything else. You managed to get a couple of seminars?
Yeah, I had a quick look at anything painting based, and there was quite a lot to choose from. Yes. And as you previously said, the tutorials with Duncan, I think, went in about 2 seconds flat. Not that I was going to go to them, but I was keeping a close eye on as soon as they all dropped. But I booked just a couple of things. I thought, I'll give that a go. I think one of them was like painting monster flesh, cool. And something else as well. That nothing like earth shattering. But I just thought, I'll book myself onto a couple of things just so I've got something to do, and I'm not sort of spending the whole 5 days just wandering about thinking, what shall I do now? And Andy Wardle and Rich Gray are over there as well. So cool. No doubt I'll be hanging with them for a bit as well, and they're running a couple of courses over there.
Oh, right,
so if
excellent.
any of our listeners that are going to Adepticon fancy a bit of tuition, and they haven't publicised them either, so I don't know if they've sold out yet, but they certainly didn't scream and shout about them. Cool. So if you fancy it, look those up as well, because they could be quite because they're running them. It's like the they're in the course together, if you know what I mean. So
sure, yeah.
It's not like an Andy Wardle course or a Rich Gray course. It's both of them teaching together. So
okay, I will just say, don't hang around with them all the time. There are other cool people to meet. But yeah, what we might have to do then is find a little bit of time where we make sure we're in a bar if people want to come and catch up with us.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, in general, we'll probably be around a bar like late night anyway. And in the venue there, there's the bar. So we are staying at the hotel itself. So we'll be when we've finished doing stuff like that and everything's winding down, we'll probably be around there or hanging around either a heresy table or the painting area. What we'll make sure
I can see me like lurking around a lot of heresy tables.
Yes, we'll make sure we've got t-shirts, haven't we, for Imperial Truth? So we'll make sure we're wearing them at least a couple of days. And what have you. But if you do see either of us, feel free to come up and say hi and have a chat. It's always good to see people. But yeah, and you're going to enter Crystal Brush, yeah?
I am indeed.
Brave soul. We won't.
Yeah, I'm not actually that fussed about it. I know it's a long way to go for a paint competition, but I'm not too,
you just see
overly.
What happens, don't you?
I think you get to a point where you think, it's just another competition. It's just, just go for the fun of it.
Cool, excellent.
It's for me. I don't feel too overly serious about it. If you know what I mean, I'm not like sort of. I haven't had any sleepless nights.
Cool.
No painting nightmares to contend with.
Brilliant. Yeah, so we'll be out there hanging out doing that. So come chat, and then because the Heresy Weekender is, so I will go up the day before, so I will go up 6 days after we land. I will be going out to the Heresy Weekender, which is a bit mad. That's from my other American trip. Sorry,
that's from
I've got an American trip.
Foreign,
American trip weekend, Adepticon, all in the first 3 months of next year. It's getting confusing, and other stuff as well. It's all good. Moving on, Stephen Bonner, I assume that is. Where's the next book? The next book of what? If you're referring to the Horus Heresy book 8, whatever it is, from Forge World, it's at the printers, so it's in China. But we they said a long time ago. They said end of this year, and they very rarely hit their dates. We kind of knew it was going to be next year. I wouldn't be surprised, as we've said before. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the Weekender. Will the Khan be out soon? I think it's pretty much accepted that Sanguinis is first. Is that correct? I think that's pretty much.
I think that's the common viewpoint. But let's face it, Forge World have a habit of
dropping something else,
dropping stuff and throwing us off track.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot more from chatting to Sam last year at the weekend. I think it was much more. Well, yeah, Sanguinis is going to be in this pose, and this is and then I've started looking at ideas for the Khan's armor. As far as that was kind of the thing from a long time ago. So yeah, I don't think the Khan will be out soon. I think we could probably be looking at another 6 or 7 months for the Khan, just because why wouldn't you space them out? For a big release in the summer. This is guesswork. Don't quote me on this. But also, I think that there's often seen put online that he will be getting a bike and a separate non-bike model. Sam has explicitly stated that's what he wants to do. He also explicitly stated he wanted Dawn to be able to have 2 poses as well, and there was another one as well where he stated he wanted to do a kind of split thing. At the end of the day, it's not fully his decision, and there is a pricing issue, and Forge World might think, are we going to make a model that's not going to sell? Is one of those going to sell and the other one not going to sell? Which is understandable.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful, haven't you, with... I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of resin.
They could even go down the road of saying, well, this model will have a set of legs and you can convert it onto a standard jet bike. Or, there might be something they can do to sort of make it so that it can do a dual purpose, but it'll be a single model. Or, there could be... They've got to look at the cost of how much it's going to be to produce.
Yeah, not just that.
And they really...
and how much it's going to be to purchase. So Lehman Russ didn't come with his 2 wolves because they didn't want to put the only way to buy Lehman Russ as being 50 quid more than every other Primark, which is understandable because people would complain. At the end of the day, a lot of people who buy Russ probably bought the wolves, but at least they had the option whether they wanted to or not. So there's the possibility of having the Khan and then having the bike that goes on his base. Whether that is, I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, because maybe that just doesn't scratch the itch enough and it's very much an add-on. Maybe they do 2 models, but it would be strange that he's the first guy to get 2 models. Because someone came back to me the other day on Twitter and said, but we know we're going to get 2 models of Primarchs moving forwards. And I'm like, yeah, we do know that. However, could you imagine that we get 2 models of the Khan and yet we haven't had a single model of the Lion yet? Like, I'd be annoyed if I was a Dark Angels player. I'm like, why have you put that effort into doing 2 of him? Why couldn't you have got my Primarch out first? Like one White Scar Primarch, 1 Dark Angels Primarch, and then come back and do a second one. That would be a legitimate complaint, I think. And
I think Tony Cottrell's got something against the Dark Angels.
Yeah, I think everyone has, and I don't blame them. A whiny legion. What's interesting, actually, is extrapolating off that, talking about having multiple models for the Primarchs, that was putting a little bit of doubt as well, because that every Primarch would necessarily get a second model. Magnus has a Demon Primarch model. Yes, it's a 40k model, but it's the same representation, really, of the Demon Primarch that Magnus is at the time he goes to Terra.
Yes, very true.
And Mortarian's the same. In the way that the Chaos releases are coming, I wouldn't be surprised to see a plastic Angron at some point for 40k. If the rest of the core range has gone plastic, why would you not do a great big plastic Angron that can be used as a Bloodthirster otherwise? And potentially Fulgrim as well. So whether 40k decides it wants to go that way or not, there's potential for those 4 dudes to have plastic models, and then Forge World to say, well, what's the point in us making a big resin one when people will go and buy the plastic one? I don't know whether they will or not.
There was even that argument when Gilliman came out in plastic, wasn't there, really? Like,
yeah,
what Gilliman do you buy?
Yeah, there is that argument, and some people have bought the new one. I think that's a bit of a different argument. And if you'd never made a single resin Gilliman, people would be annoyed. But yeah, you're right to a point. Horus will. I'm pretty sure, his name's above the door. Why would Horus not get a second model? But at some point, we also need the Sigillite, the Emperor. So, I don't know. I don't know with that one. But it would be interesting to see how they release Jagatai. I have faith that Sam will make an amazing model at the end of the day. That's...
I mean, I have no... I massively love all of Sam's models. There's nothing that I don't love about when that man sculpts a Primarch.
Oh, it's fantastic.
He's just absolutely amazing, and I know that he'll do them justice. Every Primarch that he's done, I've looked at and thought, you've captured a certain essence, with that model.
Yeah, and
no matter what it might be,
and that's something you have to accept as well. You might have a different vision of a Primarch than other people. What these Primarch models are supposed to do is capture, as you say, that essence. So some people weren't happy with Dawn's pose for his model. It's static, it's not in the fight, but that is essentially what that is. If you had to choose a single pose for Dawn, that's the pose. It just fits his character. It fits what he gets up to. It fits him perfectly. Is it the greatest gaming pose? Maybe not. But it works for the character of the model. And he does that very, very well. It'll be interesting to see how much Sanguinius is if these wings are really big.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting...
And how they balance the base. I think you'd have to build some density into that base to make that balance well as well.
Yeah, because he could be in some sort of floaty pose where it'll be very, very top heavy.
So I don't think it's necessarily going to be. So that Sam's talked about, the classical images of Michael the angel driving his spear down into the devil. So I think it's going to be very solidly attached in that respect. I can see it having some demon or something, and he's driving down into the base, but you still want some weight on that base to make sure those wings that will be 90 degrees out to the side probably are not going to topple over the model. But that's a hell of an ask. Sanguinius is, the beautiful Primarch, the most glorious, the most kind of avatar of the Emperor one. It needs to be good, but yeah, it'll be cool. I have absolute faith. Moving on again, Tom Mika. I've been reading and listening to a lot of the Horus Heresy novels recently, and many of my opinions about characters and legions have changed. Have you experienced this? So, yes, for me, I'm going to answer this one first. Having read everything they put out, listened to almost everything they put out, in some cases, no, they haven't changed, but there are some like Perturabo. I think, as I've said before, I think Graham and I'm trying to remember who it was. Graham and John wrote Perturabo in a way where I maybe didn't sympathise, but came into an understanding of why he went the way he went, and a small amount of sympathy in the fact that he knows that Horus sort of tricked him and he shouldn't have given in, but has kind of this kind of honour not to renege his vows again because he's already done it once. And then it got switched back again, reading Guy Haley's Perturabo Primarch's novel, where you realise that Perturabo is just a bit of a git and actually probably would have ended up maybe going the same way anyway. The whole Space Wolves Legion, the Space Wolves have changed more than many of the other legions have changed because of the way they've been written, and it upsets some people. I think most people really love what Dan and then Chris have done to the Space Wolves. They've become one of the legions that really is aware of themselves. Certainly Russ is very aware of himself and how he portrays himself and what he is, which is something that wasn't ever touched on before. And then the Scars is one where it's not really changed because we didn't know a huge amount beforehand, but my goodness, I love the Scars. I love the Khan. Chris has created, with help from others, has created a legion that is just fantastic, which I didn't necessarily expect to be so cool. And avoid...
I'm of a similar mind, actually, because there's certain legions that before I'd read books, I had a very down view on, and Scars being one of them. Never liked their aesthetic, what they look like, never liked the colour scheme, every time I looked at it, I don't like Scars. And then reading a couple of Scars books, thinking, actually, these guys are really cool. And it's amazing how those sort of things can be, your perception can be twisted with, when you learn more background and you learn more about what they're about and how they do things, and then suddenly you think, actually, no, these guys are awesome.
Scars have definitely gone from a very caricature legion to a pretty nuanced legion, and that's cool. The Word Bearers never really liked them, still don't. I'm not going to go through everything, but they're just, I don't know, talk about whiny little sods. They are. At the end of the day, I found some have confused me a bit. So Ultramarines, they're really cool in 30k. They're really cool, and never maybe given them as much of a chance because of the connotations of them being the poster boys. Guilliman's cool, but I think Guilliman's hard to write well, in that he's supposed to be this tactical genius, but he can't win everything. He's supposed to have it all under control, but actually, because of the nature of what's needed in the story, he has to be wrong-footed a lot. I think that's a really tricky line to walk, and it doesn't always work. But yeah, I think we'll leave that with those because otherwise we'd go through all 18 and it would take too long. He also asked, who are your favourite Primarchs? Why? And have they always been your favourite? So, favourite Primarchs. Russ, because he's Russ. And if you don't like him, then you're wrong. And yes, he's always been amazing. Even back to the old, I think it was the old Talon fluff, where he was hiding in a building till a Warhound Titan walked past. He jumped on the Warhound Titan and cut its head off. Like, that's proper old school 40k lore in the way they do it. But even from back then, it's just like, yeah, Russ is the nuts. But I think Jagatai, again, Chris has written him so well in the Primarchs novel. Like, there's the bit where he's like, yeah, we're not of the Imperium. We'll work out a way to fit in, but it won't be the way you want it. It'll be the way we do it. Yeah, we do what we want to do. Get over it.
Yeah.
So
I think I've always just liked Ferrus Manus because I liked him before like sort of the heresy was a thing, and I sort of still like him now. And I think a lot of the other Primarchs, I've either thought not a lot of them and thought a lot more of them when I found out more about them, or vice versa. Thought, those Primarchs are quite cool, and then found out actually no, they're a bit douchebaggy, and then had a lower opinion, but not a massive shift, if you know what I mean. Not like sort of colossal sort of like.
Yeah, I think the major things for me. So for Russ and Jagatai, it's this kind of sense that they're seen to be the most savage, the most kind of uncivilized, but actually they understand themselves better than most of the other Primarchs do, and they kind of share that a little bit between them, and they're not always right, but they know to question and to be aware of what they're doing and everything else, and maybe they get carried away with it, but that happens. That's cool. I really like the way that's handled. With where's it gone? Just had a thought in my head, and it's kind of disappeared. But some of the other Mortarion particularly, there are some revelations about Mortarion, and this kind of goes for Perturabo as well, where there was, when the lore was really simple, the logic of why they fell was really simple. Oh yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. Oh, that's understandable. And then Magnus, to a point on this one, when you look at it and you're like, okay, we'll take Perturabo again. Okay, so you fell because you felt this and you felt that and you felt that. Okay, woe is me, and the Emperor has betrayed you in the way he's used you and everything else. Cool. There's an understandable logical step from where you are to where you go. Brilliant. Then you read the backstory in Perturabo, in the Primarchs novel, and you're like, but no, this was always in you, actually, right? Yes, that was fine, but actually your behaviour beforehand shows that you are much less of the person you pretend to be later on, so you deserve everything that comes your way. And there's stuff to do with Mortarion about that as well, which I won't go into. And there's and Magnus, like Thousand Sons is Magnus's book, therefore it should be the book that shows him. Like, it's his point. It's the Thousand Sons' point of view. It is the glory of the Thousand Sons, and yet even in that book, all the signs point to him not quite getting it. So, like, it's like, how could you not see this? And at the end of the day, go, I didn't do nothing wrong. You know, it's it just that drove the book that some people think saved Magnus for them. And Magnus is like the most tragic of all the heroes because he was only trying to do right, was the book that made me go, yeah, he should have expected this. So I think that's my case on that one. What else? We've got one more here. Pete Reese, if the Primarchs were characters from the Muppets, who would each Primarch be? Not normally the kind of question we'd approach, I think, on this show, but if the Primarchs were characters from the Muppets, who would each Primarch be? Blimey. It's been a long time since I've watched the Muppets properly. But Perturabo would have to be the Grouch, wouldn't he? Living in the trash can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know. I mean,
I'm trying to think of Muppets, and then I'm trying to relate.
Exactly,
Primark.
it becomes hard to do. No, it's not. Like, who's the evil genius of the Muppets? Is there really even one? It becomes.
What's the little professor one?
Can't remember his name now. The one with Beaker, and
Beaker, and that could be like
Doctor, whatever his name is. Yeah. Well, Animal's got to be Angron, surely. I mean.
Yes, that's a pretty logical step.
Someone who has ideas above their station thinks they run the whole show. Horace, it's got to be Miss Piggy.
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'd potentially go with that. I'm trying to work out who Elmo is.
Whoever you say, people are going to get really angry.
Part of my answer just wants to be, who would get the most angry if I tried to pick out Elmo. Well, Dawn's got to be Big Bird, hasn't he? Big and yellow, and that's cool. I don't know. I think we're struggling.
Sanguinius could be Elmo because he's red.
Yeah, but he's just not in it. He's too moody though. He's not in it for the lols, is he? Elmo just wants to be tickled. It's fine. And who are Bert and Ernie? That's the big question. Who are the Bert and Ernie?
Alpha and Megalon.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're quite. I think it may be Fulgrim and Ferris. They're such good friends. But yeah. No, Sanguinius is the Count, isn't it?
No, that could be Conrad Kurz.
No, he doesn't drink blood, does he? Well, he does actually, probably for fun. Yeah, Conrad Kurz is the Count. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I can imagine the Count going around skinning the dead and dropping their skins on the planet. It'll be fun. There we go. We delved a little bit into other podcast territory there, I think, in answering that question.
And I didn't like it.
Felt dirty. Cool. I think what we've done, we extended this to cover those questions and everything that's been going on. We're going to leave this show as this and the author interview, and we'll come back in at the end of the show and close off. Joining me now, we have Mr. David Annandale. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent stuff. So, you're one of the newer authors to the Heresy. I think we can probably, and we've never had you on the show before, so we could probably do a little bit of an old school kind of. You were a writer before getting involved with Black Library.
I was, yes. I'd written 3 thrillers prior to my work with them, and had just sold my first horror novel, Gethsemane Hall, when I made my first sale to Black Library. And this would have been, it was the end of beginning of January 2011 that I sold my first story to them. Sure.
And if anyone follows you on Twitter, they'd understand that you've got a keen interest in horror and that kind of thing. Were you aware of the Warhammer universe much?
I was. It's one that I came to, though, certainly through the books rather than through the games. I've been sort of my wife and I have been collecting a lot of the models since I started working for Black Library. But it was the books that and those incredible covers that first drew me in, and then discovering that here was a fictional universe that combined all of the genres I love: science fiction, horror, military thriller, cataclysmic space opera, all in one place. So terrific one-stop shopping. And I remember one of the, I think it was actually one of Nick Kime's stories that I read, one of his Salamander ones that had warp ghosts, and my response was, why wasn't I informed sooner about all these things?
Excellent. So, obviously, you got involved as you looked more and more. Well, kind of tell us, how long was it that you read stuff before you got involved? Actually,
it was actually a relatively short period of time. The becoming, just loving what I was reading, and now this was also at a time when I was actively seeking out some other markets for my fiction, and I mean, and this was. I've been with small presses at this time. My day job is as a university lecturer, so at least I was keeping food on the table. But I really wanted to stretch myself in other creative realms, or get back to the broader realms of the fantastic, so science fiction, fantasy, horror, which are my first love. And so around this time, there was a call for stories for the collection that became Treacheries of the Space Marines, and they were looking for one of stories pitched about one of four characters: Lucius, Ahriman, Typhus, and Karn. And so I pitched a Typhus story, which became the Carrion Anthem. Oh, awesome. And that was my way in.
Excellent. And when you got in, obviously. You didn't write Heresy straight away.
No.
Was there a push for you to be able to write more of the horror kind of things?
They've certainly. Nick has been very good at throwing things my way that allow me to indulge in the more horrific side of my taste, and that was definitely the case with my first Heresy work. So that I'm trying to think, did I do a? Yeah. So the very first Heresy story I wrote was. Veritas Ferrum, the audio drama, but that was already with the Damnation of Pythos underway, and that the brief that was still, I guess it was just a couple of years in. I'd written a few novels for Black Library. I think I'd finished my first Yarick novel. I'm a little bit fuzzy on some of the timeline now. When Nick invited me to get on board with the Heresy, and so the brief I had for the Damnation of Pythos, which was always conceived of as a fairly standalone book, it could it wasn't locked into a particular moment when it had to be released. So there was some flexibility as to when that book could come out, and what I was asked to write for that, it was essentially a fairly gloomy narrative for the Shattered Legions, and that pretty much became my what was certainly, at least at the time, my first full-on horror novel for Black Library.
Yeah, and it stands out. In that respect as well, and it was quite interesting to see the Horus Heresy adapting into that as well. All the things that go on, there are horrific moments and there are horror-induced moments in the Heresy, but to have a book of that setting was quite a surprise, actually.
Yeah, so I imagine it probably would have been, especially, I guess, if people were expecting a book to follow, whatever had come immediately prior. And again, as I said, since it was almost like a tributary narrative that didn't have to follow one particular book. Well, of course, obviously, it had to follow. And anything to do with the Isfanian massacres, but other than that, there was a lot of flexibility for when that story appeared. So it's been a lot of fun when I got around to writing Ruinstorm, to bring the narrative threads of the Damnation of Pythos into the mainstream of the Heresy narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Did Nick? Obviously, you're talking about Nick, and that's Nick Kime, editor, yes. I'm assuming. Did he approach you about writing a Heresy novel? When was it?
Yes.
It put to you? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. The first novel that I wrote for Black Library, the Damnation of Pythos, that was one that I pitched after. I think it was Christian Dunn who was editing, one of the editors at the time. After he bought the Carrion Anthem, he said, "We'd like to see more of your stuff." So I sent in a proposal for a novel, and then Nick got in touch with me following that pitch to buy that book and sent me on my way. And subsequent to the damnation of the death of antagonists, I should say.
Yes.
Every other thing that I've done for Black Library, they've come to me with the project. So I was a few books in when Nick Heim invited me to start working on the Heresy as well.
Oh, excellent. Do you thrive on then coming to you with an idea? I don't know how you write outside of the Black Library, sphere, but is that do you relish the challenge of them coming to you?
I do. Yes, and each of the projects has got a different sort of challenge because the nature of what they ask me to do will vary so much. So in some instances it's very, very broad, right? The Warhammer horror line coming out next year. I was asked to write a story for the anthology, and basically the only request was write a horror story, right? That's nice and vague, right? In other instances, let's say for the my Castle and Crow trilogy and the Neferata books, there it was, in the case of Neferata, can you write some books about Neferata? In the case of Crow, it was, do you want to write some novels about the Grey Knights? And I said, yes. Which is there a character you had in mind? Nick said, have a look at Crow. Would you like to do him? Oh, yeah. Yes, please. Other times, there's a much more specific brief. So obviously with the Horus Heresy there's a storyline that has to be moved on. So it's even in the case of the Damnation of Pythos, I had a couple of pages that told me more or less what had to happen.
Sure.
I think the most detailed kind of brief that I've ever worked with, though, was Curse of the Wolfen, which was essentially a novelization of the Codex. The narrative was already written, and it was me trying to change that into novel form.
Oh, excellent! So potential writers out there, if you are going to want to write for Black Library, it's not just a case of wanting, being able to write what Black Library want to a point, but it's a case of having to be aware of different approaches and everything else that comes with it.
Yes.
So, as you said, Damnation of Pythos, it's this it feels like an isolated story, although we got the feeling there are going to be some callbacks to it, and indeed, as you said, with Ruinstorm, we have some there. Was that a freedom for you? Obviously, you said you've had a couple of pages, but did that freedom come with that price of trying to keep it heresy?
Sorry.
Do you understand what was that? Maybe I formed the question a bit wrong. So you've only had a couple of, as you said, you had a couple of pages of notes of things that had to be included. But within the Horus Heresy structure itself, obviously at that point we were 30 odd books through or what have you. Did you feel there was that requirement or that pressure to keep it within, or to have the Horus Heresy tag on there?
Well, there wasn't a pressure in that sense, in that it was still, feel like, okay, I'm writing a Horus Heresy story here. So it was then sort of immersing myself in the mindset of what's going on with these characters at this time. Where it, I guess that there was a certain freedom, though, in that I didn't have to worry too much about anything I did here having any sort of continuity tangles with what other people were doing. It wasn't picking up from the previous book and then writing something that's going to lead into the next book.
Sure.
In the way that Ruinstorm, for instance, it did do that, right? it had picking up the narrative threads, and then I had to move the story to from position A to position B, and leave that for the next person to take to position C. In the case of the Damnation of Pythos, I don't have any of the big guns in there, any of the characters that have been showing up in other stories, so I could do whatever I wanted to them. And the story was essentially complete in itself, though leaving some threads that could be developed later. So it was it was more, I'd say, a question of getting the chance to write in the heresy, but not being worried about the specific continuity, because there weren't any connections, or very few, right? Sure. Other than, all right, this happened at Isfahan, now we follow what happens there. What needed to be done was essentially the brief told me, all right, these characters have to wind up on this planet, and then the damnation cache opens up, and so they have to lose, and then that world is now set up for the 40K elements that was being written around the same time.
Oh, excellent! That's really cool. Did you get with that invite to write? Did you then get to go to any of the High Lords of Terror? And we probably should mention you don't live in the UK, do you?
No,
you're a bit far away.
I've sat in on via Skype on a couple of the planning meetings.
Sure.
One around. Let's see. I guess it was around the time that I was writing Pythos, which meant getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning here, and trying to be coherent.
Sure.
There, and then we had another one when around the time that I was started to write The Unburdened. And this was there was a smaller meeting, because this is being tied in specifically to the Mark of Calth game. And so it was there. The narrative was a little more closely linked to the narrative of the game. So but also it wasn't a grand meeting with everyone. It was a smaller group. Since then, it's been some of the other heresy meetings I've had have been much more one-on-one, and therefore with the editor, and therefore we've been able to schedule it at a time that we were both normally conscious.
Yeah, excellent. How was even remotely? How was being in that High Lords, as they call it, the meeting? Have you done anything similar to that before?
No. My experience of writing is essentially outside of workshops and such, essentially a very solitary endeavor. So, being able to take a part, however small, in the planning of what was coming next, and just seeing the grand arcs being assembled on the whiteboard, and that was a lot of fun.
Excellent. That's always good to hear. It's one of those experiences that us as fans would pay a lot of money. I'm sure there are a few out there who would pay a decent chunk of money to be involved in that. I'm
certainly very conscious of being very lucky to be able to take part in that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think almost every author's said similar thing, to be fair. Which I think is a testament to all the authors involved and the editorial team and whoever else gets to sit in those meetings. I think if everyone wasn't in the right frame of mind and open to that, then you wouldn't get this feedback that we get.
It is a very, very I found engaged collegial atmosphere.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Damnation and Pythos, as you say, it fits in that strange place. You've already talked about Ruined Storm having that very definite kind of start and finish point. Were you in contact with other authors for that? Obviously, there was
Yes, there is a bit more back and forth with checking to make sure that you're not going to, can I do this with this character? What were you planning to do with it? You dropped some hints about something over here. I don't want to mess that up.
Right.
And then there's some similar things after the fact too. So I'd be hearing from some of the others after Ruin Storm, asking me for some questions about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there is some back and forth, as there is also in certainly also in things like The Beast Arises, where there was a very, very tight continuity. There was a lot of back and forth and there, and some insane herding of cats on the part of the editorial team to make that come together.
Yeah, and that's a subject we could talk about another time. I'm really interested by The Beast Arises and how that affects Black Library going forwards, to be honest. Ruinstorm then allowed you to play with, so going from Damnation of Pythos with no real named characters and as you say, it's standalone. Yeah. You've then gone to write 3 Primarchs.
Four.
Four, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
How was that? Was that daunting, or was that something that took a while to get into?
It was a little daunting, yeah. The to suddenly being able to play with that many of the big toys. I was fortunate that leading into this, I had written the Guilliman standalone book, so he at least felt like an old friend. So I was seeing a familiar face as I went into a Ruin Storm, which and that was somewhat odd because with the Ultramarines, that's pretty far removed from my horror wheelhouse. So it really was a very good creative stretch. I think that, again, there's a sidebar. That's one of the things I enjoy about Black Library is that you're not allowed to rest on your laurels or just stick with what you're comfortable with. You're going to be pushed in other directions, and which is, I think, always to the good. So at least with Ruinstorm, I had Guilliman there, and I had done some work with the Blood Angels, not in the Heresy, but with enough with him that I felt I had some kind of a feeling for Sanguinius and where he was coming from, and Kurz having the darkness kind of naturally there, but also, I mean, just really I felt the reading the books immediately prior to it, and what Gav Thorpe had done with all of those characters, I felt that just reading what he'd done there, I was like, okay, I know who they are, where they're going, what they're about. I think I have a solid foundation for going forward.
Sure, and it's a really interesting book, Ruinstorm. Just from reading it, how it goes from so much of the story is Sanguinius and what's going on in his head, and then part of the time that's happening, we're also dealing with some of the biggest kind of scenes in terms of actual physical size that we've seen in any Black Library book, to be fair. Was there elements there? Because it gets kind of crazy with the warp.
Yeah, that was me cutting loose completely.
Sure.
I always I gravitate towards the over the top and the operatic. So with the first book I wrote for Black Library, I had this kind of planet mulching grinder machine that I've always loved going big.
Yeah.
And this is, again, one of the things that drew me to the Black Library universes in the first place, that the amp is cranked to 11 in this in this world. Things are really big and really over the top, and so I wanted to shoot for the most gargantuan scale things that I could. For if I'm going to have 4 Primarchs in this story, then they better be up against something really big.
Yeah, and they certainly are. They absolutely certainly are. And yet, in the same scope, do you like getting down to the level of basically being in Sanguinius's head?
Yes, yeah. So that was also the one of the things that so Laurie Golding was my editor in setting the getting the story going, and so we had some back and forth talking about how this was all going to play out and what was going to happen and so forth. And so one of the things that we were having fun with was going for the gigantic set pieces as we moving through the book, as ever bigger and bigger and bigger things, but then. When we finally get to the climax, then kind of shrink it down to the much more intimate level. And at first, after all of these huge things, then they're just winding up where it seems like, well, there's nothing happening here. There's nothing here, and so that the ultimate target in all of this is still the soul of Sanguinius, essentially. So the hinge point for the fate of the galaxy and all these other gigantic events is going to come down to what's happening in the heart and soul of one person.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that you, coming from your background with your predilection to horror and psychological thriller and all that kind of thing, and Kurz is in this and is not he's not the guy that we're really studying anywhere near as much as it is Sanguinius, where Kurz is the one, when you think of it, primarily whose brain everyone wants to open or doesn't really. He's an interesting character in himself.
He is, and I think both he and Sanguinius, though, there's an interesting similarity to them, right? In that they both are seeing the future in one sort or another. Sanguinius in a more limited fashion, but nonetheless it's there. And so with both of those characters, you get the inevitable questions of free will and predestination. How much of this is already written? Can you change what's going to happen, or not? And Kurz has very definite ideas on this. Right, that it cannot be changed, and so and then he's also therefore someone who's essentially seen it all, right,
sure.
And completely jaded and cynical and dark about all of this. So what would it take to horrify someone like that? And I think if his foundation, his bedrock, that the future is written, that all of this is going to happen and cannot be changed. If the possibility arises that it might be changeable, that would be horrifying for someone like him.
Yeah, absolutely. To have such certainty and to have that taken away would be hell, really.
Yeah.
But that's as you say, that is the really nice juxtaposition when we look at Primarchs. It's very easy to pair them off one-on-one, but they actually can be paired off multiple times. And Sanguinius and Kurz in that aspect is a really nice kind of clash, and works well through that book as well. Were there any parts of Ruinstorm that you were struggled with? It just, when I was reading it, I was like, as you say, I was going from internal stuff to the big stuff, and it just seemed wild and crazy in a good way.
Good.
Yeah, but I can't. I'm not a writer for starters, but I struggle to comprehend being able to do that and keep that within a structure and a limit that then gets you from point A to point B as well.
Yeah, well, here's where outlines are your friend.
Sure.
Right. So Laurie and I talked about the book fairly extensively, and then went back and forth with the outline, so that as wild and crazy as the events get in the book, they were very carefully mapped out ahead of time. And also trying to keep a link between the micro and the macro, so that the gigantic events also have a significance to the characters psychologically. All the Primarchs are being attacked in the book by on their weak points, the things that are going to pry them open. Sanguinius is the primary target, but all of the others are being hit as well. So that I suppose I mean in the end you sort of I would be picturing the large scale attacks and the intimate ones as still very much on a continuum. I think perhaps what becomes challenging is the sort of in the long run is the battles, making sure that there's always a way you're telling describing the battle in an interesting way, that with clear stakes, the things, making sure that every battle scene matters in one way or another, so that it's not just a repetition of weapons being fired.
Sure.
Is sort of, I think, the thing to always bear in mind, and sometimes is easier than others, depending on the book. But again, I tend to harp a little bit on outlines, because when I first started writing, I was very suspicious of them. And the first few novel-length manuscripts I wrote, I didn't have outlines, and including the first. So the first book that I sold, which was the fourth book that I wrote, I didn't have an outline, and in the editing process, that book lost a third of its length, right? Some 50,000 words went into the waste bin, and that's where they belonged. From that book onwards, I've been outlining, and that's made a gigantic difference in my life, and it's also more or less eliminated writer's block, or that like the worst of the obstacles. Having a map doesn't mean I can't take a detour. Sure. And see the site somewhere else, but it means I always know where I'm going, and I'm not going to get lost. And so that's what was true for Ruinstorm is true for everything that I've done for the Black Library. I always have that outline beforehand, because the nature of this fiction is it's going to be crazy and over the top, right? Yeah. But that structure that we have before beginning the project helps keep things on track. Yeah,
fair enough. Excellent. It's all still a bit alien to me, but at least I understand the alienness a little bit there. If we take a look at you've written Guilliman and Vulcan, Lord of Drakes.
Yes.
Now, they take a step away from kind of what I'd associate you with, although they look at Guilliman having to embrace a little bit of his dark side. Is that a refreshing? Again, did you ask for? They came to you about.
They came to me with both of those.
With both. Yeah. Of them. Okay. Cool. And was it an immediate kind of yes? I'll take that.
Well, absolutely, it was. Though there's also, as you said, it's like, okay, those are not. They're different from the kind of thing that I usually do. So it was. I think. Well, each of them presented a certain daunting challenge from different ways. In the case of Guilliman, I'd never written him before. The only time I'd written really about the Ultramarines was in the Unburdened, and I was busy slaughtering them because this is from the point of view of the word bearers. So now I had to actually like the Ultramarines, and getting to know Guilliman and what made him tick, and Laurie was certainly a really great help there too in getting going and giving me some ideas on how to get inside his head when we were in the planning stages of the book. And then, of course, because this was the first book in the series, then no pressure there at all. But it wound up. I was very pleased with how it turned out and the reception it's received. And so I certainly became very, very fond of Guilliman and the Ultramarines while writing that. And so that was so that was nice. But then when it came time for Vulcan, there was a different kind of challenge, because the salamanders are their Nyx, right? He's the master of the salamanders, and also had all these books with Vulcan under his belt. So I really there's some big shoes to step into here. It's helped by the fact that he's the one who asked me to write it, as was the case with the I did at least have some experience with salamanders from several years back when I wrote Overfiend. And the third novella in that is with the salamanders, and I'd done a little bit with Vulcan in The Beast Arises, so it wasn't entirely a terra incognita, but it certainly had its own set of challenges, of a sense of I really don't want to screw this up.
It's an interesting thing with the heresy. The fan base seems to be even more kind of feverish than they are in the generic, it's not generic at all, in the 40k universes and the Age of Sigmar universes. And there's some interesting talk online whenever a book comes out.
Right.
Do you ever, you said you've kind of happy with the responses. Is that kind of immediate responses you get Twitter? Do you ever go look?
No, I never go looking. It's when people have come to either told me at Weekenders or someone's got in touch with me on Twitter. I stay out of the forums and I mean, I know some of my colleagues take a demented pleasure, I think, in wading in, but It's a fan space that I'd feel a little bit like a trespasser, and it's also, I think, just for my own sanity, best to not be careful which rabbit holes I stumble into.
Absolutely, I do Google reviews of this show, and some of them are hilariously aggressive, and I kind of thrive on that. So you do need to be the right kind of person, and
yes.
and let's face it, there's not that many people listening to this show, so I completely understand when you're putting a piece of work. And again, I don't quite put maybe as much heart and soul as you put into your books, so I completely understand that. And it's a really interesting thing, actually, that the Primarch's books as well, because they came out with this announcement and we didn't really know what we were getting, and in some ways we still don't know what we're getting from the next books as well. We know roughly what it is, but when the next book comes out, if that story is not what someone wants or thought they were going to get, it's a real interesting place. I think it's a really cool idea, though, and love getting into the backstory. I think Vulcan's such an interesting character.
That was certainly for Vulcan the story to tell there kind of was there was an obvious one to tell, which Nick had suggested, in that essentially the origin story, right, of bringing the salamanders together. That was a story that needed to be told. In the case of Guilliman, it was a little it was a lot more open, right? The actual brief didn't really specify anything in particular at all. And in speaking with Laurie, he said, "Well, how about there's at one point there's this particular Orcish empire that's taken out, so maybe there's something you can look into for there." So they're very sort of, one is a book that is dealing with a crucial moment, or perhaps one of the most crucial moments in the history of a legion, the forging of two disparate halves into they're not even called the salamanders until the end of the book, as opposed to a story where the legion already exists, and there's more a case of sort of showing Guilliman who, despite his brilliance and tactical genius, he has blind spots too, right? Because why didn't he see this coming? Well, here's why. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where those books are so useful, because we can only see so much in the heresy novels. I mean, we're already at 50.
Yes.
If we saw everything we wanted to see, it would be huge. But there we go. You've done some shorts as well.
Yes.
which there's a couple on there. What I wanted to talk about was the binary succession. Have you done any audio before?
I had, yes, the very first heresy thing from me that appeared was the audio short Veritas Ferrum,
of course it was.
which was written, but that was I had started writing the Damnation of Pythos, and I was asked to do an audio short for the Advent calendar, and asked to do a little prologue story to Damnation of Pythos. I've done a few other audio dramas since then for I guess for both lines, and there's I've got a ghost story coming out. I think it's October that it's going to be appearing with a commissar.
Ooh, cool.
Before the binary succession, the other, I guess, main heresy audio I did was Iron Corpses, which was on the match set with John French's. Of course, So you just have to reach for a title, and then it flies out of your head.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened with me there. I forgot Iron Corpses was an audio, crazily.
Well, of course, yeah, because and some of them, a lot of them get written as just straight stories beforehand. Though sure. the last couple of audios I've done are done as straight scripts, not as short stories that are then turned into scripts.
Yeah, so. The binary succession itself, again, it's a really interesting story to be told. Right in the middle of everything that's going on, we have this incident, which actually, again, sets up the 40k we know, but actually has quite large ramifications as well throughout the universe. And yet it's in this short audio format. Is that fun to play with?
Yeah, lots of fun. And that one, being able to, essentially write a political story, that was a neat change of pace. And with those characters too, and as much fun as it was to write that, hearing the finished result was just amazing. The what they did with the voices of the various Mechanicum characters, all at varying degrees of inhumanity, I thought was just marvelous. I was so pleased with what was done with that. But yeah, it was there is a lot of joy in playing around with that form. Not just the events that you get to deal with in a relatively short period of time, but also picturing the audio landscape that you're trying to sculpt for the listener as opposed to the reader.
Yeah, I can imagine that being an interesting, and obviously I'm guessing because of the distance between the two, once you handed it in, you very little kind of until you get that CD or MP3 file.
Yeah, there's a real transformation. There's the becoming real that happens when you turn in the final revised manuscript for the novel, and then you see the galleys, and then the actual physical book arrives, and you see the cover art, and it's all in hardcover and paper, and it's lovely. So there's that finished thing. But with the audio drama now, it drives home the collaborative nature of theater, of performance, right? So that there's this script but that's just the beginning, and then there's the added layer of interpretation that comes in, and so it's almost like it's an entirely new. I can't say object because it's an MP3, but it's seeing it go from print to then something that you're listening to is an extraordinary experience, I find.
Excellent. That's really cool. I think if I'd done that, I'd be obviously time and distance allowing. I'd be so tempted to sit in and be aware.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a right answer on that, but there's something. There must be something magical about sending it off and receiving it back. As a product. That's really cool. Talking about the artwork, you mentioned briefly there. Did you have any ideas yourself about the artwork for your any of the stories you've written for the Heresy?
It depends a little bit on them. In the case of the in the case of the Unburdened, the artwork for the game was already done. So I had that in my head. With Ruinstorm, they got in touch with me partway through the writing process, saying, okay, here's what we sort of have in mind for the cover. Are there some descriptions in the book that would be relevant to this? So there was a bit of back and forth that that had some effect on that. And in other instances, I don't know what it's going to look like until it comes out, as with the binary succession. In some of the other books too, sometimes it's just a wonderful surprise what the art is going to be. In other instances, there's there's certain details that they'll check with you. And in the case of Maledictus, which is my first short Grey Knights novel, the cover was already done well before I'd finished the manuscript, and so I was told, oh, anyway, he has this on the cover. He's got this big axe. Can he have that in the book? Oh yeah, sure, fine. I can adjust that.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Was there anything else about the Heresy? Is there a story in the Heresy that you've had, as in of working within it, or anything like that, just on the off chance?
I think for me, Ruinstorm was essentially my swan song. Though there were, I think, there's maybe a couple of short things. There was the Malcador story that came out this summer, said obviously more during the Great Crusade than the Heresy itself. So my main work with the Heresy is now done, though I have written a prologue novella to the Siege of Terra, so that I guess you could say that it kind of straddles the two there. Yeah,
that was announced. So Spear of Ultramar?
Spear of Ultramar,
yeah,
yes.
That's the one which we'll be talking about at the Weekender. When you're over for that, which is cool.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Absolutely, and obviously the siege is going on and doing its thing. Before we go on to what else you're doing with your time, if you could have, was there ever a time? So I asked this question to Dan Ablett badly, and I've reworded it a bit since. Is there a book or a story or an event in the Heresy that you wish you could have written? Even if someone's written it, I'm not saying write their book, but I'm saying
right. I don't think so. I mean, I think if I was going to say one thing, it would have been, in fact, Ruinstorm, because once I had finished with the Damnation of Pythos and set up the Veritas Ferrum as this demon ship. I ever since then I thought I'd like to go back and finish the story of the Veritas Ferrum.
Sure.
And so I got to do that with Ruinstorm. So I feel that I've been very, very fortunate in the tales that I've been able to tell in the Heresy. And no, I haven't. I don't think I've at any point I felt, oh, gee, I wish I'd written that, or I wish I had a chance to do that. No, I think I've been really quite fortunate in that regard.
Oh, excellent! That's cool. It's good to hear the different authors give different answers to that, from completely different perspectives as well, which is all good. So, as we mentioned, you have got other stuff. What can you tell us about that you've got coming out? Because I know that's always a restriction.
Well, Let's see. So I guess the next thing to be coming out will probably be Spear of Ultramar. Over the summer, I wrote one of the novellas that's going to be in the Portmanteau collection from one of the early releases of the Warhammer horror line, and that was enormous fun to start getting going on that. And I'm now splitting my time between the 40K and related universes and Age of Sigmar. So I am, as we speak, in the finishing stages of writing my next Neferata book. This is the Dominion of Bones, and it will be a full-length book. If we think of the Neferata, Mortarch of Blood, as being kind of book zero, establishing Neferata in the Age of Sigmar, then here we've got book one of we're hoping a trilogy.
Oh, awesome! Excellent. Yeah. I must admit, when Warhammer Horror was announced, I thought that might see a bit of your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very much in favor of this project. I think it's an excellent idea, and I'm very excited to be part of that.
Well, even from the outside, it seems like a very good idea as well. We've talked about it with Michael from Track of Words. It seems sensible once it's happened. It's one of those things. It's like, oh yeah, of course.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
and indeed, seeing your name on Neferata was not much of a shock actually, and seeing what could happen with that.
Oh well, it was, and that was a sheer delight when I'd just been thinking of getting in touch with Nick to say that I'd rather like the idea of taking a stab at an Age of Sigmar novel. I'd done some short stories, but hadn't actually done a novel yet, and I hadn't actually said this, right? I was just thinking about that when I get this email from him saying, "Would you like to do one of those now?" And we were thinking maybe Neferata, and my wife basically had to peel me off the ceiling when I found out that I was going to be able to work with Neferata, because if there was one character that I would have picked to do, it would be her.
Oh, excellent.
So just writing her is just writing her has been fun, like writing Yarrick was for 40K. I love this character to death. So I getting close to finishing this book and can't wait to do the next one.
Wonderful.
But before that, I have to finish off the Castle and Crow trilogy. So I think I'll be plunging into the Halls of Corruption. It will be the next project.
Excellent. All sounds pretty awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure speaking to you.
You too.
Yeah. Excellent, and that's another episode of the Imperial Truth done. Wonderful stuff. Before we go, let us ask for feedback. Again, we didn't get a huge amount of questions this one, partly because of the time we put the questions out. If you do have questions, then feel free to send them in to greg@theimperialtruth.com or neil@theimperialtruth.com once we get Neil's email fixed. It's being a bit funny at the moment, so if you don't get a reply straight away from Neil, then either hold on.
If you want something instantaneous, you can always get hold of me on my Instagram or something along those lines.
Which is,
that will ping through to me.
Which is
at Neil Paints on everything. Yeah,
and I sometimes find Instagram's quicker than WhatsApping, so it's always good to see. And I'm on there at Child of Fang for all those things. And of course, the show is at Imperial_Truth on Twitter. And come join the group. Come find out. Rob has been running a competition on Facebook for a signed copy of Spear of Ultramar, I think it is. All you have to do is go and basically take a photo of your army. So go and check that one out. That's a pinned thread on Facebook. And we're going to be doing some more giveaways on the show as well in the coming weeks. As we move through the Christmas period, we will be recording roughly as normal. Haven't discussed this with Neil yet, but We will be. There will be a couple of shows out in December. We're not going to take a break. We're going to plough on through. We've got author interviews still lined up. We've got a couple more to record, and more to kind of fix dates for. So there may be a break in the author interviews over that period, which is fine because we can fill in with something else. That's not a problem at all. But I know some people have contacted me saying they're really enjoying them. I've really enjoyed doing them. So apologies for this, the latest one maybe not being quite as good quality. There were some sound things going on, being a bit weird, and I don't think I was quite as on the ball as an interviewer in this one as I had been in some of the others. So I have to take some of the responsibility for that. So I do apologise. I have provisionally booked a date for an event coming up. I'm not going to announce anything yet, but I won't be running the LGT this year, London Grand Tournament. I think I said that on the show. They have got someone else running it, which is quite interesting. That's going to take place the Lee Valley Sports Centre, I think. It's a busy time. I'm certainly busy on the Friday going to watch some Test match cricket. But I was contemplating popping up for that just because it's close as much as anything else. We're talking already. Our Blood and Glory kind of group chat is already kind of discussing what we're planning for next year and what we can and can't do with the space available to us. But definitely making sure we try and get the best Blood and Glory ever for next year if we can. But aside from that, I'm looking at another date, which I hope to have information up fairly soon. So keep an eye on your social medias for all that, and I will give plenty of notice. It will be a summerish event, so that people can go and book hotels before they get expensive, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to support the show, you have multiple ways of doing it. 1, go and tell your friends. 2, go and give us a review on iTunes. 3, go and join the Facebook group and chat in there. And if you really want to, Patreon's a tip jar as well. So if you feel like you would like to give us $1 or $2 or more for the work we put in, then we would be more than happy to accept it. Obviously, there's no pressure to do any of that. It's wonderful for those people who do, and if you listen anyway, still welcome to have you. This show will remain free to listen to. Free of monetary cost anyway. That you might pay for it in other ways. That's
with your soul.
Yeah, absolutely. And every now and then I get someone message saying, "Oh, I've just started reading," or "I've just bought these books," or just started this Legion. That is your own decision. We are not responsible for that, are we?
We are not responsible for any hobby purchases that come off the back of us.
No, absolutely. Although, if Forge World are listening and wish to cut us in, we are absolutely responsible for every purchase that any of our listeners make, and we would like 5%. Not sure that's going to happen. You can also support us by visiting Element Games and purchasing there. And then actually as well, I've been forgetting to say, we've still got t-shirts. You can go to Teespring. The links are in the show notes, and I think they're in the show notes. I will try and put them in the show notes. They're also on Facebook and on Twitter. And we have a small selection of t-shirts available on Teespring, which are good quality. They print them every 5 days, I think it is. So if you order them, it's a maximum of 5 days before they're printed, because they print them in batches, and are sent to you. And I wear mine quite a lot, actually. I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of it, because you're never too sure with some of these places. They're not always good. Yeah. And I'm also talking to someone about getting a couple more designs made up. So yeah, if you want an Imperial Truth t-shirt, they're out there. You can be one of the cool kids, honestly, and have one.
Only the cool kids wear.
Only the cool kids. Yeah, absolutely. We'll go with that. Only the cool kids with their toy soldiers wear the Imperial Truth toy t-shirts. That's just the way forwards. Brilliant. I think we've probably run out of things to say there. So unless there's anything you want to add, Neil?
Nothing else from me.
Cool. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.